Hey, everybody. I've got Lynn Ungar here with me. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, you're a Californian like me. I think you're in the hot part of the valley. I think, where are you?
A little further east than Alameda, but not very far. I'm basically Hayward, so
Okay, great. Good.
middle
Nice.
of the East Bay.
Okay, good. Nice to see you and meet you as well. I just reached out to Lynn because, of course, I read her poem "Pandemic," and which I shared with all of you. And it was, just a poem that just sort of worked me in the deepest, most beautiful ways. So I reached out, and thank you very much for responding. I want to say a couple things about you, just to kind of give a little bit of frame here, which is that you're a minister in the Church of Larger Fellowship, which I read, right? Which I read a little bit about. And also that you train dogs, yes? And then why did I read, or did I make this up or dream it, that you actually train dogs to dance? What?
I do. I participate in a variety of dog sports, some of them like agility and obedience that people might have heard of, but there's something called canine musical freestyle, which is choreographed routines to music, which is basically dancing with dogs. So it's very creative and surprisingly difficult and really fun.
Big dogs, little dogs. Are certain dogs better dancers?
No, I mean, I have Australian Shepherds or medium-sized dogs, but people do it with tiny dogs, huge dogs.
Okay. We'll have to look into that. I appreciate it. I thought that was really, it's like, I've never heard of that before. It's really beautiful.
Most people haven't.
No. So I was touched that you're a minister, and I wanted to know, how is your role as a minister similar to your role as a poet, especially I would say in these times?
Yeah, I mean, in general, but particularly in these times, I think we're trying to make meaning, and religion and poetry both do that. They try to find ways to articulate what matters, what's important, to think about how we are in the world, how we are together, what stories underlie how we see the world, what stories underlie how we behave in the world. And yeah, that's what religion does, and I think it's a lot of what poetry does. And I have been writing a lot more than usual and putting it out on Facebook, and I have been doing it really explicitly to myself, if not to whoever happens to read that, as part of how I understand my ministry, which is to say, to try to articulate things in a way that gives people a deeper perspective.
And do you have to, I imagine, like, you have to work that out in yourself first. Like, are you really addressing your own questions as you begin to connect with the world at large?
Yeah, I mean, there's some questions that I think are everybody's questions. I mean,
right.
So yeah, I mean, they're my questions. I put them out there because I think that they're other people's questions, because how are we not dealing with what does it mean that people die, and what does it mean to have limitations, and what does it mean to live with the unknown? Yeah, they're my questions, but I wouldn't put them out there if I didn't think they were other people's questions too.
What I mean is, and it kind of goes with another question, is like, for me as a writer, it starts with what's sort of speaking to me. It starts with, what am I thinking about? What is touching me? And from there, the writing comes. And what I'm hoping is that, of course, what's touching me is touching you in some way, in that universal connection. And so that's kind of where I'm going. Not that you're different from the rest of us. And then that is my question, what has been touching you lately? What have you really been moved by, such that you'd want to sit down and write a poem about it? I mean, there's an obvious answer, but I'm asking more personal to you. What touches you these days?
Well, I mean, I guess I can see the answer in a sort of variety of different ways, because I think oftentimes a poem starts with an image. So it's what touches me in the sense of what makes me want to write a poem
Mhm.
is a thing that seems to hold
Mhm.
some
Mhm.
idea.
Mhm.
So it's almost like, what are the things that happen to be speaking to you about the things that you want to be listening to?
Mhm. That's great. And so what, like, can you give me an example of something that has touched you that inspired something
Um,
that you saw?
I wrote a poem about sourdough starter,
Uh-huh.
which I could read you later if I wanted, because it gone at the idea that we end up with so little that it turns out that when you can't find yeast and can't find all of the other stuff that we're used to having, that
Mm.
you can you can make something out of nothing. Like all it takes for a sourdough starter is, and the I I mean, it would be better with the actual line of the poem, but it's all it, with food and water and air and time, we will find a way to rise.
I love that. But that's so beautiful. That's just right. You know, the metaphor is right there. You know, what a soulful, what a soulful suggestion, you know, because we are so limited and so much has been taken from us. But so much, of course, we're finding is ancillary, not even that important. And we're sort of, you know, centering down to, well, what is it important? How soon
Right.
can it get, you know? So that's really beautiful. I love that. Maybe you will read that for us. Um, that's great. I loved it. Anything else comes to mind? Just, this is the daily domestic world we're in, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, there seem to be a lot of birds around lately. Like I guess because
Yeah.
it's quiet, or there's less, I don't know, but for some reason I keep finding things with birds. So, so the birds have been speaking to me. I mean, from the, like, there's a mockingbird outside of my window. It's midnight. It will not shut up. Um,
Telling you something.
um, so,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, a hummingbird that hovers there kind of looking at me, that turned into a poem
Mhm,
about, in memorial,
mhm,
about the people that we've lost and the way that
mm,
ghosts are present to us.
beautiful. You know, the reason I'm asking you these questions like this is that I think, you know, sometimes when we sit down to write, whether we're writing a poem or we're writing an essay or just even a short piece, sometimes we think we need to come up with the big idea. That, you know, that has to be something really important. And so I'm very interested in everyday ideas, everyday symbols, the things that are around us already, and that we don't have to go far to find something worth writing about, you know?
My understanding of poetry is that it attaches small things to large things.
Hmm.
That is the function of poetry,
Hmm.
is that it uses
Hmm.
small things, concrete things, things that we know what they are,
Hmm. Hmm.
to point toward things that
Hmm.
are bigger.
That's great. It reminds me of just like old lessons about writing, which is that our job is to stay with the details that we know, like go deep into the details and use them to, even though they're personal to us, to crack open the universal meaning, you know? So it's not theorizing, but we're going deep into what we know. And from there, we open to hopefully everyone, you know, or to a deeper, larger. Hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's fine for people to write for themselves
Hmm.
without trying to be universal. And I think there are different, writing has different functions.
Yes.
And if you are trying to write something for other people to get something out of, then it needs to point beyond your own life.
Right.
If you're
Exactly.
not, then it doesn't.
It doesn't. Then it's just you're writing to yourself, and that's medicine. That's also medicine. You know, that's really important. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. I um, I wonder if you know how you sort of said this in the beginning, but just do you feel this is I don't know what you're going to say to this, but do you feel Like you have a role as a minister, and you were saying that, you know, your role is to help talk about meaning and how we find meaning. And do you feel that you have a job as a poet? Like, or are you writing for yourself? Like when you're writing, are you writing thinking about others and your role as a poet? Just curious.
In at least in this time, but no, in general, I think that I am a poet in the same way that I am a minister, which is someone whose ability lies in putting out words in ways that are helpful, in ways that make connections. Is
Right.
more explicit than helpful is not a useful term. But yeah, I do write poetry that I want to be useful to other people.
Right.
That because it is, yeah, it is part of my identity, and the identity as a minister and the identity as a poet are the same identity, which is that I feel like what I have to give is an ability to see connections between things and to help other people to see connections between things in ways that might be helpful to them.
And I almost want to say, like, to see into the invisibility of things, you know, to sort of see like a little bit behind the veil, perhaps, or maybe I'm making too much magic of it for you.
How the small things connect to the big things.
I got it. Yeah. There was a couple things that I read today. Poetry's job is to help us see the world a little differently. And then I loved Rosemary Watola Traumer said that, you know, poetry speaks to the mystery of things. It's very different than, you know, a corporate bullet point. And then, you know, poetry is always spoken to the unseen, the mysterious connection. And so it's really, you know, we turn to poetry, you know, and then, you know, what I'm thinking too is that the houses of poetry are always open. We don't need the president to open a church or demand that churches be open. Like poetry is, you know,
and open to everyone in their own way.
and in
Like
their own way.
you walk into a house and everybody sees a different house. Like the poet has built a structure for you, and you're going to come set up housekeeping within that structure, taking with you whatever it is that you bring. It's going to be different for everyone.
That's right. It's a much more open kind of message, you know? Yeah, beautiful. I appreciate that. Thank you. I could talk to you a little bit more about everything. I'll read you this one Billy Collins quote I saw today, and then I'd love you to read to us. And what he said was, the pandemic is slowing things down to the speed of poetry. And I thought that was so beautiful, because it's just like gentling down, you know. We haven't been able to, you know, snap our fingers to get out of this one. And no matter how much money or how much whatever you got, you're in it. You know, you get to face your own stuff with it. So anyway.
So I thought I would read you a poem called On the Other Side.
I'd love to hear it. Thank you.
Through the looking glass, down the rabbit hole, into the wardrobe, and out into the enchanted forest where animals talk and danger lurks and nothing works quite the way it did before, you have fallen into a new story. It is possible that you are much bigger or smaller than you thought. It is possible to drown in the ocean of your own tears. It is possible that mysterious friends have armed you with magical weapons you don't yet understand, but which you will need to save your own life and the world. Everything here is foreign. Nothing quite makes sense. That's how it works. Do not confuse the beginning of the story with the end.
I just want to burst into tears. It's so beautiful. And it's so lovely to hear you read it. I read it on the page, but to hear you read it is so special. Thank you.
Thank you.
More reading on your own website or something. You're really beautiful.
Yeah, I have at least some older stuff that you can hear me read on my website, but I could put some of the newer stuff there as well.
Oh, please do. I think it's a balm at this point. We really could use it. if we're not members of your own church and your own ministry, at least we can be followers of your poetry.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. Okay, thanks so much. I really appreciate your time. Get back to your good work, and we'll continue to look for your poetry out there in the world.
Take care.
Yeah, take care. Thank you so much. Bye.